Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Progressively Incorrect. My name is Zach Groeschel. I'm super excited to be talking with Jonathan Regino all about math and curriculum evaluation and just catching up with him because we are going to be doing a big Steplab Intensive in May of 2025 this year. So if you want to learn more about that and you want to attend, I recommend that you go to my website, educationrickshaw.com/coach, and you can see all of the events I am putting on year round, including Steplab Intensives. Just a word from our sponsors before I continue. This podcast is brought to you by John Catt, which publishes some of the best books in education, evidence-informed books, books about explicit instruction and cognitive load theory and practice. I always put the links in so that you can see their entire catalog, but I would recommend that you get my book. Just tell them it's been out for a bit since I've been recording, and it's gone sold out, and it's back in stock. So just tell them the power of explanations and explicit teaching. I think it can help you and your school out. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a long time since I've wanted to have you on. How are you doing today?
Hey, Zach, thanks for having me. Really excited to be on here. Definitely have listened to every episode multiple times and looking forward to it.
Because when I started this off, I was like, I think only my mom is going to listen to this. And listeners will then immediately recognize my mom is deaf. So that's sort of a joke with sort of a joke. I didn't think very many people would listen to this. So to hear you are a fan when I'm a huge fan of the work you do is awesome. Tell me where you're calling in from and kind of what you do.
Yeah, so I am a pre-K to 12 math supervisor for a small school district in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia.
Nice. And as a math supervisor, we're going to get to math in a bit, but the first time I ran into you, other than Twitter, was we were talking about how difficult it is sort of to select curriculum materials, how the information out there is conflicting. A lot of these materials are poor quality, or everybody says there's no good curriculum program, and so on and so forth. And you emailed me, and we had a big discussion around some of the thinking and some of the tools that are out there and how systematic this approach can really be. So take us through this. Tell me about how you approach evaluating curriculum materials. What are some of the common focus areas and pitfalls that you see when selecting and evaluating materials?
When I left the classroom, I went to go work for a local agency that kind of worked with all the school districts within the county. And one of my first jobs was to help school districts find and evaluate new materials. So I had to get to the point where I knew every textbook that was out there, every curriculum that was out there. I met with all of the salespeople and had to know everything about these curriculums. So when a school district came to me, they could ask their questions. I could help them narrow it down. What I found was at the very beginning, if a school district saw success with a textbook, every school district went after that textbook. And then by the time that last school district signed up with the textbook, the very first school district was already moving on from it because they hit a wall and they needed something new. And I thought that there's got to be a better way than all of us just keep chasing our tails and using the same material over and over again. So I started to do my research, started learning more about writing curriculum. And I spent a lot of time actually writing curriculum for school districts, writing curriculum for specific subjects and teachers and grade levels. And from there, I started learning how to evaluate curriculum. So we had outside agencies who were doing this that you paid for, and I went through training with them. I did some training through EdReports to learn about how they evaluate their curriculum. And I took those two skills of writing curriculum and evaluating curriculum and started applying them to the job that I was doing with my local districts. And when you come with that mindset, it changes from meeting with a company and meeting with their salesperson and listening to their spiel to come to those meetings with a list of really hard-hitting questions that they have to pause and say, we're going to come back to you. We need to find out more from our curriculum people ourselves. And when you can get a curriculum company to kind of stop with their sales pitch and really define what they want to do, what their plan is, what their philosophy is, I think you get more out of it. So that was the approach I took when working with my districts. And I've just built that over time, building more knowledge and gaining a better understanding of how curriculum is used, how it's written, and how we should be looking at it.
Something you touched in there, it's a question I've had because I haven't dealt too much with the publishers, but I have a sense that they may have a list of like what products they're pushing, kind of like at a restaurant where you've got your special of the day and that special, let's try to get that out because we got all the ingredients. But what I'm hearing you say is the minute you say, look, this is what we're looking for, they sort of might shift their tactics a little bit and be more willing to align or match you with materials that more fit that focus than what's the special of the day. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, their salespeople are top notch. They know what they're doing. They can sell you on all the bells and whistles. And if you ask teachers, you work with a curriculum for a pilot, you do it for a couple months and you love it. And then you get into the day to day for a full year and you realize, oh, it's missing X, Y, and Z. If you think of it like a cell phone, right? You spend $1,000 on a cell phone, and then if the company was to tell you, well, you can't use text messaging, you can't use the internet unless you pay extra fees. That's what we're doing with curriculum. You get in there, you bought this amazing tool, and then, well, it's not working for my special ed students, it's not working for EL, it's not working for my gifted students. And well, we have a product for that. Just add this on. It's an extra fee. Buy this, buy this. And then you start to unravel, well, all those bells and whistles that you sold me at the beginning weren't actually there. I didn't buy enough of the product. I didn't spend enough money to get all those bells and whistles. Or it's there, but it's like one line. And unless you really know your content or you really understand how to work with those specific populations, there's one-liners or there's little boxes on the teacher page really don't help you. But it's a checkbox that says it's in there, we have it, so you're good to go.
And you're kind of getting to this idea of curriculum bloat in a way where the publishers want to have more things to bring to you, right? We have this, we have that. And it might be true that they have something there. Like I remember using programs and every fourth page it would be like internet connection or something. It'd be like, now have your kids do cyber safety or whatever. They'd be then connecting to technology standards that might be in the district. And then there would be something around, I don't know, real world application, and that would connect to some kind of social studies or try to be more content integrated. And as they put all of that stuff in, it makes it so that the core experience that maybe you're looking for, like phonics or math facts or whatever else, is sidelined, or it leaves it up to individual teacher interpretation, and they can pick the least high leverage things. I mean, how do you navigate that space when it's kind of like baked in to this system?
Yeah, so that goes to the two natural psychology things that we have going on. Number one, when we have too many choices, we can't make a choice, or we always feel like the choice we made is the wrong choice. And when things are too complicated, we go to the most simplest form of whatever it is. So publishers that have way too much content in there, or they have too many bells and whistles, the teacher's going to go to what is it I'm teaching, what do the kids need to know, and ignore everything else. So if a teacher starts to struggle and you say, well, did you look at this area for extra help? They're going to, no, I didn't do that. Why would I do that? It's too much content. There's too much there. And as soon as you make a decision, you're going to second guess yourself. Should I have used this other resource? Should I have done that? Should I have done that? And teachers are way too busy. The expectations for teachers are way too high at this point. If you're going to add a bloated curriculum, bloated textbook, it's just what's going to happen. You're going to narrow it down to the very simplest form. And then at that point, is it that the textbook's not working? Is it the curriculum that's not working? Is it the teacher and teaching style that's struggling? You don't know as somebody in my position, because the teachers aren't even using the textbook the way it was meant to be used, because you can't. You only have so much time with kids. You only have so much time in a day. And all those bells and whistles don't fit into a 60-minute or 90-minute class.
And it sort of undermines the whole argument that I've had about having curriculum programs, which is that they're supposed to save teachers time. They're supposed to reduce workload. And when you have that space, you can do more formative assessment. You can create small groups. You can act on data, right? But when the teacher's guide itself is so convoluted, the materials are you just have to pick through the this bloat. And finally to get to what it is, it actually takes more time to plan maybe a lesson with poor materials than it would be than if you just went and wrote down some stuff on a note card and taught without it. And so it really distresses me. I think this is important. What do you say to people that just sort of outright just reject the idea of even going down this road and getting these materials? These materials are they make money for the publishers. Teachers don't like to use them, and they should be able to teach sort of creatively and make up their own lesson.
So I've done that. I've had to write my own curriculum, and the amount of time and knowledge that that takes just learning how to write curriculum, right? So I did a quick stint at Age of Learning, and I was writing middle school curriculum, and that was my full-time job, was just writing curriculum. And the level of knowledge and the level of research that you have to do to be able to get this right, because you only have one chance. You have one chance in front of these kids. And that level of knowledge and information and just being able to sequence all these pieces together is so difficult to do as a teacher. You can slap it together and have something, but is it going to connect to the grades prior and the grades after? Are you picking strategies that go all the way K through 12? Is what you're teaching now going to align with what they're going to do in science class? Or is the science teacher going to have to reteach the math because we didn't use the same verb and wording? Like all those pieces are really difficult, which is why you need to start with a textbook, which is part of the reason why things like ed reports and curriculum reviewers and people that were doing the job that I was doing for the county level are so important, because you need somebody to be able to decipher what's good and what's bad, what do you need to look for, and narrow it down so you can ask the good questions, right? So right now, illustrative math is a huge market. And every single publisher out there has taken a version of illustrative math and slapped their version on top of it. And now you're picking which version of illustrative math is best. You need to start with the question of, does illustrative math even match your philosophy of teaching before you even start reaching out to these publishers about, should I even look at your version of it, right? If I go out to a publisher right now and say, hey, I want a capital DI explicit teaching curriculum, I've got very, very few options, right? So even like narrowing it down to just the philosophy that you want to teach would help you in this endeavor. But starting from scratch and having a teacher write this, there's no way that they're going to be able to do it and do it well without a ton of training and a lot of time on hand to write curriculum.
You mentioned ed reports, which I don't want to, I just want to say what people have said, and which is that there might be a comprehensive approach to evaluating these programs, but then they sometimes get it wrong, right? And I'm not sure to what extent they get it wrong and how much that's just that certain programs are awarded the 5 star and other that people find lacking and others aren't even on the list or get a lower rating. Talk me through like what that procedure is to evaluate a program.
So whether you like ed reports or not, the goal that they had was to give kind of a structure to what was out there. If you remember when Common Core came out, publishers just slapped Common Core on their textbooks and didn't change a single thing from the version you were using last year to the new version that you were using right when Common Core came out. And ed reports was about like, let's figure out what actually is matching what they say they're matching and what's doing what they're saying they're doing. Anytime that you create a rubric or you create a set of rules, people are going to figure out the quickest way to break those rules, right? And that's what happens. So anytime you do an evaluation, you have a set of rules, you have a set of guidelines. People are going to figure out, how do I get as close to that guideline so I get it right and I can check off a box. And ed reports has done a really good job of changing their tool over time. So improving their tool. So they find a weakness in their tool, they improve it. And then when they find another weakness, they improve it. So they just had a new version come out at the beginning of this summer that improved on the last version that came out. All the reviews are by teachers, the evaluations are done by teachers, the rubrics are built by teachers. It's people using the curriculum themselves. So The process, the last review I did was over 6 months long. We look at every single page, every single word. I go through a textbook multiple times. So there are 3 gateways, and every time I go through a gateway, I'm looking at every single page of that textbook. So it's months and months and months of work. Publishers send their textbooks to be reviewed. And reports does not go out and say, like, hunt you down and find them. They publishers send them out. They know if they want to go on a state list, they have to go through ed reports for some states. So if you're not on that list, it could be that a publisher hasn't sent in the curriculum. It could be that it's on a docket still being getting ready to be reviewed. But the process, whether you agree with it or not, it's a great process to go through yourself as a teacher, because you get to learn how to review. You get to learn what makes good and bad curriculum, and you get to see what it looks like to actually understand how to evaluate a curriculum. So even if you do it once, go through the training. You don't even have to evaluate a curriculum. Just go through the training, get an understanding of how to do this, and then take that back to your school district. So the next time your school is like, hey, we're going to review for a curriculum, you know what type of questions to ask and what to look for.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of an experience I had recently where I was talking to school board members, and this was like at a kind of a conference for school board members that trying to support them, keep them coming back. It's a really tough job. I think even post COVID, it's just one of those sort of thankless jobs. And the school board members are asking this question. They're asking like, I'm meant to approve a curriculum, but I'm giving three different options, and I have no idea if I can trust those three options. I have no idea I can trust the process. But I'm also a business person. I'm also I'm a local I run a Walgreens. I have nothing. I'm just a parent. How do I actually evaluate the three that have supposedly been evaluated? And that's the big question. I mean, what would you say to them?
I would start off with, like, what is the philosophy of the school in your math department or your English department, whatever department that's looking for a textbook? Like, what is it that you actually believe in? Because until you can state in simple terms that everybody can understand what you believe in, what you want to see in your classrooms, you shouldn't be picking any kind of textbook until you can answer those questions, right? Once our kids start to struggle, they continually struggle. And for me, that's a systems issue. It's something that's going on, that if a kid starts to struggle in 3rd grade, they're going to continue to struggle till 12th grade. So let me ask the publishers, what is it that's in your program that's going to help me really find out is what the kid's struggling in, and not just a generic, here's a grade level and topic, but like, is it a fluency issue, an acquisition issue? Is it a motivational issue? And do you have interventions in place to help with those things, right? Because a core teacher should be able to handle a grade level above and a grade level below within their own classroom. And then beyond that, we're talking gifted and special ed. But within my classroom, if a kid starts to, I'm teaching 5th grade and they need a 4th grade skill, I should be able to pull that out and work with them on that. It shouldn't be too far out of their range. Well, what in the textbook's going to help me with that content and do a good enough job that I can do that? And the second piece is, in Pennsylvania, you only need one math class to be an elementary math teacher or an elementary school teacher. And that math class doesn't have to be about content either. So what is it in that program that's set up so teacher who's coming in that really doesn't understand how to add fractions, what in that program is going to help them understand how to teach this and why we're teaching it that way? We have programs that teach arrays, and from kindergarten all the way through Algebra 1, you use arrays. You can swap quadratics with arrays. But if you have a kindergarten teacher that doesn't understand arrays or why it's used, they might say, well, this is a pointless strategy, and not teach it, and then undo what needs to be done to get them ready for Algebra 1. Those things need to be built into the curriculum, but it also can't be so bloated that it's a textbook and the teacher's not going to read it. Like, there's that fine line of, how do we get this information in there that's really important, but how do we do it in a simple way that teachers are actually going to use it? And I think that's a fine line that textbooks are really struggling right now. They've added all the pieces in because we've asked for it, but now it's to the point where it's too much information and we have to simplify. So take that marketing resources that we have, and how do you get it down to the simplest, easiest version that teachers are going to use?
I get worried that they get these samples or they look at the internet, the website even, and what they're attracted to, what feels like a good proxy for ease of use and effectiveness is really just the presentation, the aesthetic of these materials. And they get, okay, look, like the text is going to be larger print and the pictures are going to be in color and vivid, and they look at that and they go, I can teach this. But then fast forward 6 lessons from there, the material isn't chunked. It isn't broken down into smaller steps. There's not a lot of practice and review. And those things often make their way into these things as just text, right? Some of the best materials I've seen are just text, and they're and what the teacher says and what the student does. And I almost wonder if they're just some poor proxies for good curriculum selection out there that I think drive a lot of these decisions in the wrong direction. Am I on the right path with that?
Yeah, it's so we're doing a review of my district right now, and I prepped my teachers for over a year to get ready for this review. We ran PD and worked on things like cognitive load, interleaving, worked examples, Rosichin's principles, like all these things to get ready. So when we started doing a review, all that was in the back of their heads already. Like the teachers knew this is what we're looking for, this is what we're expecting. So as they get into, the first lesson goes off without a hitch, it's great. And as they get into the second and third lesson, they realize, wait, this program is missing. It doesn't do worked examples, or it's missing the interleaving piece, or we're not teaching to mastery. Those questions are coming up, and I don't have to go out there and ask them. They're coming to me and saying, we've been working on this for a year and a half. This program doesn't match what we've been working on. Let's scrap it and move on to the next one. And I think without that prep, you're expecting a teacher to give you feedback on a curriculum without the background of having written curriculum, without the background of reviewing curriculum, like all these things that I've taken years and years and years to build knowledge on. I'm expecting my teachers to do without any of that background, and that's not fair. So prepping them ahead of time on all these things that we're going to look for in a curriculum, so we're all on the same page, helps to lessen that load. But it was a year's worth of work before we even started looking at a new textbook.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's important. Is there a timeline like you have for for a pilot? Like you put out when you actually have them do it, you randomly kind of sort it. Like maybe you pick volunteers, but basically like 50% of the pilot group's going to take one and 50 is going to take the other. Like how long do you think it really takes to know if these materials are good enough that we don't need to supplement too much, they do the job, and we can work with these materials?
So typically a review is 1 unit. I push my teachers, we're doing a half year review. I would love to do a full year review, but following all the rules that we have to follow in districts, we could do a half year review of each curriculum. So doing a half year, half the teachers are participating. It was all volunteer. They all went through the training. So no matter what, everybody's on the same page. And actually the review we're doing right now, after the training, more than half the teachers asked to do the training. They took the knowledge that we had built up to this point. The trainer went through the program. They saw the connections to what we had practiced beforehand, and they jumped on and asked if they could be part of the pilot because they saw the connections and they were excited about it. I want at least half my group piloting. I want to do it for half a year. I think anything less than that, you can get that fake version of the program. You can use the best unit that they have, and then you realize that was the best unit and they have nothing else that meets that. That happens on sales calls all the times where they show you the best part of the curriculum, and then you realize that was the best, that was the peak. There's nothing more than that. And by that time it might be too late when you realize it.
Yeah, you can see that what feels successful like in terms of massed or blocked practice in a single unit, and then you move to the next one in that longer timeline, then you can start to see, is stuff coming back around? Oh yeah, that was from the other thing that we taught. This stuff doesn't get dropped, and you can actually see some of these cognitive science topics being expressed or not with the longer timeline, where you look at an individual lesson, you do a short timeline, and you realize like this might feel good now, but it's counterproductive in the long run for memory. I love it. We've been talking about curriculum for a while, and we could go on and on. This is something that I should probably develop a song and dance and take some training and get better at this. So you've inspired me in that way. Tell me about math right now because the NAEP scores just came out. They were unsatisfying, as they tend to be. How are things going in your view in the world of math education?
I'll say this first. I might be wrong in my theories here, but we lack a focus in math. We're half in on inquiry, we're half in on I do, we do, you do. We're partially in on technology, partially in on paper and pencil. Like there's no focus. And when there's no focus, you just kind of scatter and it's hard to figure out what's working and what's not working. I feel like we're 10 years behind where English was at this point. And for me, like if you go back to No Child Left Behind, the philosophy was like if we can raise reading scores, all the other subjects would raise too. And spending all that time focusing on reading has left us in the dust. Math is struggling, science is struggling, social studies is struggling. But I think one of the things that really comes out is if I go to an elementary teacher and I say my kid is struggling in reading, they can ask a series of questions. They can figure out if it's a fluency, comprehension, if it's a language piece. They know what question to ask, and then they have interventions that go with it. They might not be correct, but at least they have answers that they can go and give you. In math, if I go to a teacher right now and I go to elementary school and I say, hey, my kid is struggling with multiplication facts. This is year 3 and they still don't know them. What do I do? The teacher's going to tell you to do more of it, like more practice or do flashcards. And flashcards would work if they were done right, but even flashcards we're not doing correctly in math. So when we think about like what's going on with NAEP and the tests that have come out, we're just all over the place. We haven't focused. There's too much content to teach. The standards are too broad. The sequence of like what a kid's got to learn and when they have to master it, we have these points of what kids should do, but we just let the kids go by and like, hey, you haven't mastered it yet, but we have to move on anyway. The conversation about the new math versus the old math and new textbook versus old textbook. I can show you textbook from World War II that look exactly like the textbooks we have today. There is no difference. It skipped 2 generations and we're right back to where we were a while ago. The only difference between that generation, our generation, is we have more content to teach and we picked a different philosophy to teach, right? So when I graduated college, it was all constructivist teaching. Everything was constructivism. And it was a different philosophy back then. It was more direct, explicit teaching, and we've shifted. So the new math that we have in our textbooks, that was a publisher choice. It wasn't Common Core. All these misnomers that are coming out have led to this. It's almost like chaos in our schools. If I take a kid that's in my elementary school right now and I send them to the district right next to mine, how close to the education that they're going to get, like in math, it's not super close. Even if they're using the same textbook, they're not getting the same education. So to fix what's happening on NAEP, I think we have to narrow down what we're teaching, narrow down the standards that we're teaching, the expectations that we have, and really focus on a single, even philosophy or strategy. But being half in and half out on all these different things isn't working and won't ever work.
Yeah, it's almost like we've gotten too ambitious with and that's not us, it's who's ever handed this down to teachers with what's expected to be learned in 1 year and sort of leaving foundational skills too quickly. And so what you end up with, in my view, is a lot of covering. And I talk to teachers, math teachers, and they just say, I just honestly don't know what to do. And my stock answer is pick some priority standards, work with your PLCs, develop lessons that really hit those. That other peripheral stuff, maybe touch on it once in a while, but that's not satisfactory to them because they're like, honestly, like, what if that dooms them? What if I choose the wrong thing? And what if when the test comes up, I don't show that growth because I narrowed my focus to prerequisite skills. I mean, what are you talking about with your team in regards to this?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I think we have a systems issue. The Greater Texas Foundation did a meta-analysis of following from birth all the way through career and how kids did in math and how they ended up in their career. And what they showed was however you're doing at those earliest stages is pretty much how you're going to do for the rest of your life. And then there was another report that showed by the end of 3rd grade, whatever your test results are at the end of 3rd grade is pretty much how you're going to do at high school. And I can't imagine kneeling down in front of a 9-year-old at the end of third grade and saying, hey, you struggled in math, good luck for the rest of your life because you're not going to make enough money. You're just going to struggle forever and ever. Like that's a systems issue. That's our fault. So what I've been working with my district is on the intervention side, going back to what is it that a kid's struggling with? Like most programs can tell you the grade level and the content area they're struggling with, right? All those tech programs are out there, get you down to grade level and content. That's not the lowest level you need to go to be able to intervene correctly and to fix these things. And if we could intervene correctly, we wouldn't have as many issues as we're having. We could take a kid who starts to struggle, figure out the intervention they need, fix it within a couple of weeks, and get them back on track so they're not so far behind. So we need to know, is it an acquisition issue? Is it a fluency issue? Is it a motivational issue? Do they need procedural help or conceptual help? Like all these pieces have specific interventions that go with it. And we've known these interventions for years. It's just they're not in schools. So I've spent the last couple of years building that knowledge in my teachers, building that knowledge in my coaches. And my goal is at some point, I can go to any teacher and say, hey, I have this kid, he's struggling on this concept. What question should I ask next to figure out what's going on? And then when they know those answers, my next question to my teachers will be, all right, what type of intervention goes with that problem? And if they can answer that, I know I've done my job. And at that point, we're going to have less and less kids in tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. I'm not going to have to kneel down in front of a 9-year-old and say, good luck with the rest of your life. And at that point, that I've done my job and I'll be happy and be able to retire and all that stuff.
You raise a good point about the tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, that if like strong tier 1 instruction were in place, hypothetically, you could move large cohorts of students along the grades, and the instruction in the materials would match their current level, the tests would match what we're teaching them, and everything would fall into place. But every school that I've ever worked with has like 18 to 26% proficiency on math and so on and so forth. Like every school says their pyramid is upside down. We've got all these kids in the red zone, and just 10 kids in the entire grade level maybe are at where they need to be, and 2 of them maybe should be in a gifted program. And it's almost like the intervention needs to happen in the classroom, that we need to create class-wide type of interventions where everybody gets what they need based on these questions. Is that what you're suggesting? That we not necessarily break down the whole system and create lots of homogeneous groups, but how do we work with the structure we have to get kids what they need so that they can make progress?
We could take an easy benchmark. If you say 80% of your class is proficient at something, then you can move on. If less than 80%, then we need to do a class-wide intervention. And class-wide intervention could be similar to the individual intervention, just the intensity level is going to be different. So if I'm teaching a lesson and I do an exit ticket, and at the end of the class, I realize, less than 80% of my kids got this, tomorrow I'm going in, I'm not doing the same thing over again or slightly different. I'm going to figure out where that misstep was. Where's the error? And I'm going to intervene on that error and try to narrow it down to specific things that I can do to fix that. I think too often, and it's not the teacher's fault. We have 180 days in school for the most part, and most of our curriculums are about 170, 165 days, just enough time to get through assessment and all the assemblies and awards and all that kind of stuff that happens. You miss a day in there. Like we have weather events happening in our area this week. You have a weather event, we're thrown off our schedule. And it's like, I don't have time to slow down and fix this stuff. But at the same time, if we knew how to intervene correctly, we could fix these issues and prevent the harder lift at the end of the year where you're trying to cram in all the information that the kid didn't understand. I truly believe, like, if you go in and narrow down what you need to teach to what are the priority standards, like you mentioned before, you would lose a third of your curriculum. We could get rid of a third of our curriculum. It's just blue. I bring up the example, when my kids were younger in elementary school, every year the science unit in the spring was butterflies. And I have 3 kids, 3 different grade levels, and all of them were doing butterflies at the same exact time. And I went to this school and I was like, hey, why every single grade level is doing butterflies? Why is that? And it's the teacher got moved to a different grade level, kept their favorite unit, and it was a butterfly unit. The same thing happens in math where I'm really good at this one concept, or I really like teaching this one thing, so I keep it in. So if I go in and say, let's cut, and then teachers start to bring more back in. And I've done this with enough districts now where I know if you believe the process and you narrow it down, we could be done teaching by spring break every year, or you start bringing stuff back in because you really like it, or you feel like it needs to be in there. And then we get this bloated curriculum. But we have to, that's where, again, we need to focus and make a decision and just follow through with those decisions.
Perfect. And I think this ties into my next question, which is developing math teachers, right? We have a lot of barriers that exist, right? Especially with younger students. A lot of times the math teachers are not math majors and they're not very skilled with the math. And we also have just these pedagogical wars that we've kind of alluded to, where we're half in, half out, or some are deeply entrenched in kind of inefficient methods. How have you approached development for teachers? How has that developed over time for you?
So, like I said, in Pennsylvania, you only need one math class to be an elementary math teacher. Middle school is a little bit more, but even that's not totally focused on content. So when I meet with a teacher, I take the stance as if they've only taken one math class and that they're coming to me as somebody who was anxious about math or nervous about math and somebody who is doing their best with the knowledge that they have. And we start from the basics. We don't assume anything. So if working with a teacher and they're whatever unit they're on, we'll meet ahead of time before they're on that unit. We'll talk through the major pain points of the unit. What is it the kid needs to know? What is it that they get hung up on the most? What are the bigger misconceptions that they see and how to teach that kind of stuff? Um, we try to do that beginning of the year before school starts. We try to hit the first 3 units every single year. So whether you're a veteran teacher or a brand new teacher, you're meeting with me and my team, and we're going over those first 3 units. Like it's a brand new everything. Throughout the school year, when we have PD days, we try to build in the next couple units. And if we can't get them in on the PD days, we try to grab teachers during their prep and just talk through the next week or next 2 weeks. On the global side, we've spent the beginning or the end of last year talking about word problems. So word problems are always a hang up in elementary. So we talked about the whole, how do you teach word problems, the schema-based version of it. What do you look for? How do you error correct when students are struggling? How does reading comprehension and the science of reading, how does that incorporate into word problems? And we talk about the philosophy side and the strategy side and all that kind of stuff. So we're focused on the day-to-day. We're also focused on the big global things. And then we also touch on the bigger philosophy, like cognitive load and things like that. We're trying to build in to help them understand some of the decisions that they're making on the fly and how that affects students from the teaching perspective. It's a lot of work. I am fortunate enough. I have two of the very best math coaches I've ever worked with in my life. I tell them all the time they could step into my role any day they wanted and probably outdo me without any help. That has made my life a lot easier because now instead of just me trying to handle an entire district, I've got two other people that allow me to do this job. But it starts with building knowledge. And that side of the intervention side, we've been building not just our regular, but our special ed side too. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of knowledge that I've gained over the last 10, 15 years that I'm trying to impart on my teachers slowly so they're not overwhelmed. But I told them when I started this job that I want to put the district on the map for math. And this is how we're going to do it, little steps at a time. But eventually we're going to get to the point where we don't have there's third graders who struggle in math and prevent them from getting to algebra in eighth and ninth grade.
Awesome. So you build this, you build insights and knowledge so that teachers can make better decisions. They feel more confident. They feel more successful, right? But there is this kind of knowing and doing gap, right? Where there's the actual doing in the classroom where you need to change your performance. Do you have a method in which you are getting into classrooms and you're sort of doing side by side coaching or even feedback, using feedback cycles for teachers to kind of make sure this knowledge is really getting incorporated into their daily practice?
Yeah. So number one, I don't ask my teachers to do anything that I haven't done myself. So if I'm going to bring something to the district, I'm going to be the first one to teach that lesson. Bringing in new curriculum, I'm going to be the first one to teach that lesson in front of kids. If I bring in PD, I'm going to do it in front of the students. The teachers need to know that I'm going to mess up too. They're going to see me make mistakes. They're going to critique me. They're going to give me feedback on what I could do better. So when I do that to them, there's a better relationship. When we do PD in this district, our expectation is that you're going to use what we taught you within the week. And my team, myself, we all go out and we look for those things. And it's not a I got you moment. It's a let's see how this looks like when you implement it. And we're going to give you feedback on the fly or after class. So there are times where I'll stop the lesson and I'll chime in and say, hey, let's try it this way. Or I'll pull them aside after the lesson and say, hey, when you did this one part, your next class period, try it this way. And I'll stay and I'll watch and I'll give you more feedback on that. I want my teachers to see me more as a coach than a supervisor. If they see me as a supervisor, I'm not doing my job well. If they see me as a coach, I know I've gotten down to the level where I need to make changes in the district.
Love it. And this ties into kind of a mini announcement for your district and for Steplab is that coming up in May in the Philadelphia metro area, we have a Steplab Intensive that you are hosting, right? It's kind of cool to bring people from all around the United States or in the local area. And I'm interested in kind of how you see the professional development of coaches as being part of the improvement that you're trying to drive.
I'm so excited for StepLab to come here. I brought StepLab to the district for the principal side of this. Our principals are going out and watching teachers do their thing, and their feedback was non-existent. And if a teacher fought back on any kind of feedback, the principal would essentially just change it to proficient. So everybody's proficient. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad, everybody's proficient because it's easier than having an argument. And also, most of our principals really struggled with what I know there's something wrong, but I don't know what to tell them or what's next. So StepLab became that entry point into you know something's wrong, you don't know what's next. Well, here's a resource that tells you here's the next step to try. It's got all the research built in, it's got the videos built in, the conversations are built in, like everything's there for you. So I could take my principals who really want to do a good job with instructional coaching and put them on this platform, get my teachers involved. And now the conversations are changing from you did a great job to I really liked how you did X. Can you try this next step? And when you do that next step, let's rehearse it and practice it so you know you're ready. And the conversations of coaching went from my math coaches to a district-wide coaching piece. So it's no longer my department that's coaching, it's our entire district is coaching each other.
It is transformational. It's a different way of viewing those interactions. It's hard for me because a lot of times with leaders, when they talk to me about their issues, they know this is a problem, but they can't name it. They can't put their finger on it, right? They're just like, I go in and I have a conversation. Of course, I need to have a relationship. They understand, they realize that part. Of course, I've got to give some praise. It's just, I don't know what to say next, and maybe they might blame it on their subject knowledge. Maybe they might blame it on the information they collected wasn't sufficient. So they come back again or they drop the ball. And it's just a scaffolded approach where you select a step and you have that you have that kind of menu, that curriculum approach to coaching. It definitely changed everything that I did. So I'm super glad. I'm super glad that we get to host over there. We're going to be bringing in, not everybody is 100% confirmed, but I'm pretty sure we've got Peps McCrae, Harry Fletcher Wood, Josh Goodrich, Rachel Sewell. We're going to have a ton of people come. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, and I'm looking forward to seeing in the next few years that third grade student their destiny is not determined by their math test, that actually instruction and the environment that we create for them at a school can really get kids to pursue their dreams and be able to choose perhaps math and science majors thanks to what you're doing. Jonathan, it's been great having you on. Listeners, if you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, I would love if you could spread this around to the people in your network. Get this out there for me. It's just word of mouth at this point, and give it a 5-star rating on the platform of your choosing. Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Take care.